Tugas saya. Selamat pagi dan salam sejahtera. Anda bersama saya Nina Rosman bersama rakan setugas saya.
Dan saya Najib Arif. Kita mulakan Niaga AWANI untuk jam ini dengan perkembangan terkini tempatan yang kami kumpulkan hasil kerjasama bersama dengan Dagangan News. RAM Ratings mengunjurkan pertumbuhan pinjaman tahunan penuh antara 4.5 hingga 5% pada 2022 meskipun peningkatan kadar faedah yang didorong oleh pembukaan semula ekonomi secara berperingkat. Agensi penarafan itu dalam satu kenyataan berkata pendapatan teras sebelum cukai bank-bank dijangka berada dalam aliran meningkat tahun ini disokong oleh charge rosot nilai yang lebih sederhana dan pengembangan margin faedah bersih. Dan juga pada masa sama bagaimanapun keuntungan dijangka terjejas oleh cukai makmur yang dibayar sekali manakala pertumbuhan ekonomi global yang perlahan, ekoran perang Rusia-Ukraine, impak daripada tekanan inflasi tinggi ke atas perbelanjaan penggunaan dan kekurangan buruh terus memberi risiko pertumbuhan perlahan. RAM Ratings menjangkakan industri perbankan mencatatkan keuntungan yang lebih baik pada suku pertama 2022. Pada Mac 2022, pertumbuhan pinjaman industri berjaya mengekalkan momentumnya pada 4.6% dari tahun ke tahun disokong pinjaman isi rumah yang lebih kukuh selain pengembangan sederhana bagi pinjaman perniagaan. Ketua Bersama Penarafan Institusi Kewangan RAM Ratings Wong Yin Ching berkata pelbagai program bantuan pinjaman ditawarkan kepada peminjam semasa pandemik telah memberi tekanan sementara kepada pinjaman lapuk dan juga menurutnya agensi penarafan itu percaya nisbah kos kredit sistem perbankan pada 2022 berada di paras terendahnya iaitu 40 hingga 50 mata.
Malaysia juga merekodkan pencapaian baharu dengan jumlah perdagangan pada 2021 melepasi paras 2 trilion ringgit dan mencatatkan pertumbuhan terpantas sejak 1994. Menurut Ketua Perangkawan Datuk Seri Dr. Muhammad Uzi Mahidin berkata, nilai perdagangan Malaysia mencatat pertumbuhan dua angka sebanyak 24.8% kepada 2.2 trilion ringgit pada 2021 berbanding 1.8 trilion ringgit pada 2022 selepas mencatatkan pertumbuhan negatif selama 2 tahun berturut-turut. Katanya, semua negeri mencatatkan peningkatan jumlah dagangan yang didominasi oleh Selangor diikuti Pulau Pinang dan Johor. Menurut beliau, import turut mencatatkan peningkatan sebanyak 23.3% kepada 987.2 bilion ringgit pada 2021 berbanding 800.5 bilion ringgit pada tahun sebelumnya.
Dan rakan setugas Haris Ashraf Hasnan, ada angka-angka terperincinya. Haris, bawakanlah angkanya.
Ya, sudah tentu Najib dan juga Nina, kita nak melihat kepada bagaimana dari segi prestasinya perdagangan untuk tahun 2021. Nampaknya graf yang kita terima daripada DOSM yang menunjukkan bahawa graf ini kalau kita lihat secara kasar, kita nampak bahawa ianya merupakan satu angka yang cukup positif. Kita nampak lengkungnya line graf ini naik dengan jumlah dari segi jumlah dagangan, ekspor, import serta imbangan dagangan juga menunjukkan satu angka yang cukup cukup positif. Dan kalau kita nak melihat secara telitinya di sini, kalau kita nak bandingkan sebelum COVID-19 iaitu sekitar tahun 2018 maupun 2019 seperti yang dinyatakan oleh Nina tadi, kita melihat ianya berlaku peningkatan yang begitu ketara berbanding kalau kita nak bandingkan sejak tahun 1994. Ini peningkatan yang boleh dikatakan cukup signifikan dalam memberi gambaran sebenar bagaimana pemulihan ekonomi berdasarkan prestasi perdagangan untuk tahun 2021. Dan sudah tentu selain daripada itu kita nak melihat juga antara angka yang dikongsikan oleh DOSM termasuklah dari segi kalau kita nak bandingkan dari tahun ke tahun. Apabila 2020 kita nampak bahawa masih lagi berlaku sekatan dari segi perjalanan dan juga mungkin para pelabur agak khawatir dan juga memikirkan bagaimana dari segi prestasi termasuklah bagaimana untuk melabur dan juga fasilitasi perdagangan. Itu antara persoalan-persoalan yang sering ditanya pada tahun 2020. Kita lihat banyak dari segi bagaimana ianya sedikit menyukarkan mereka. Tetapi kita nampak pertumbuhan 2 digit melibatkan ekspor, import, jumlah dagangan serta imbangan dagangan. Kita nak meneliti kepada ekspor dahulu, peningkatan 26% daripada 983.8 bilion kepada 1.23 trilion. Dan ini satu angka yang cukup memberangsangkan melibatkan ekspor. Dan kemudian import juga peningkatan 2 digit iaitu 23.3% kepada 987.2 bilion. Jumlah dagangan juga secara keseluruhan seperti yang dinyatakan oleh Nina tadi 2.2 trilion. Ini angka iaitu peningkatan 24.8% jika dibandingkan pada tahun 2020. Dan imbangan dagangan pula 37.7% peningkatannya kepada 252.6 bilion. Ini merupakan angka-angka yang dikongsikan oleh DOSM melibatkan prestasi perdagangan bagi tahun 2021, Najib dan juga Nina.
Okey, walaupun angkanya kalau kita melihat adalah angka yang baik untuk kita raikan, namun ada juga cabaran sektor-sektor tertentu. Sebagai contoh untuk sektor teknologi, kalau kita melihat sektor teknologi dijangka menyaksikan pertumbuhan yang sehingga 2023 dengan trend bersetempatan semakin giat dilakukan dan juga berkembang pada ketika ini. Ia membolehkan Investment Bank Research mengekalkan pandangan overweight terhadap sektor berkenaan. Namun, pada masa yang sama, firma itu menjangkakan kekurangan chip global akan berterusan sehingga tahun hadapan apabila industri meningkatkan pengembangan kapasiti mereka. Tambahan pula, katanya dengan pandemik mendedahkan kelemahan rantaian bekalan global, semakin banyak negara akan mengukuhkan pengeluaran semikonduktor tempatannya. Tambah firma itu memandangkan China merupakan pengguna dan pengimport semikonduktor terbesar dunia. Ia berpendapat negara akan menjadi lebih agresif dari segi pengembangan kapasiti bagi memenuhi bekalan 70% permintaan chip tempatan menjelang 2025. Meningkat daripada 17% pada 2021. Menurut Investment lagi, ketidakseimbangan bekalan permintaan untuk chip otomotif masih kekal kritikal. Katanya dari segi segmen pengguna akhir, ia terus menyaksikan kekurangan chip yang teruk dalam segmen otomotif.
Gamuda Berhad, Kumpulan Perangsang Selangor Berhad KPS dan Lingkaran Transkota Holdings Berhad Litra Holdings mengumumkan draft perjanjian bagi termah dan syarat jual beli saham untuk cadangan penjualan syarikat konsesi lebuh raya kepada Amanat Lebuh Raya Rakyat Berhad ALR dimutamatkan melibatkan pelupusan 4 lebuh raya kepada ALR pada agregat 4.477 bilion ringgit dengan bahagian Gamuda berjumlah 2.347 bilion ringgit. MSM Malaysia Holdings Berhad MSM kekal fokus untuk mengekalkan pelan pemulihannya di tengah-tengah peningkatan kos pengeluaran utama iaitu gula mentah, pengangkutan gas asli dan tukaran asing. HSS Engineers Berhad menyasarkan untuk memperoleh kontrak baharu bernilai 500 juta ringgit bagi tahun ini dan ketika syarikat itu sedang membida projek bernilai 375 bilion ringgit membabitkan sektor rel, jalan raya dan air bagi meningkatkan nilai kontrak semasa berjumlah 516.7 juta ringgit.
Kita teruskan dengan berita seterusnya. Malaysia akan mengadakan perbincangan lanjut secara rasmi dengan Thailand mengenai projek kereta api berkelajuan tinggi HSR ke Bangkok tidak lama lagi. Menteri Pengangkutan Datuk Seri Wee Ka Siong berkata, perancangan projek itu adalah antara perkara berpotensi yang boleh memberi manfaat kepada rantau ini. Ka Siong berkata demikian melalui laman sosial Facebooknya ketika kunjungan hormat delegasi Majlis Perniagaan Kesatuan Eropah ASEAN EU ASEAN pejabatnya di Putrajaya mengenai projek HSR baharu antara Malaysia dan Singapura pula. Jelas beliau pihaknya sedang memikirkan bagaimana ia dapat direalisasikan setelah dibatalkan kerajaan sebelum ini. Bagi penambahbaikan berterusan Malaysia kepada rangkaian pengangkutan awam dan logistik, beliau juga menjemput pakar-pakar pembangunan infrastruktur pengangkutan EU ABC untuk mengambil bahagian dalam tender bagi pakej kerja projek dalam negara. Pada Mei lalu, Malaysia dan Thailand bersetuju menubuhkan jawatan kuasa khas bersama bagi membincangkan perkara terperinci mengenai perancangan jajaran dan aspek teknikal lain berkaitan cadangan projek HSR Bangkok Kuala Lumpur.
Kerajaan yakin sasaran pendapatan isi rumah sebanyak RM10,000 sebulan menjelang 2025 mampu dicapai berikutan pelbagai strategi yang diperkenalkan untuk memulih dan memperkukuh asas ekonomi terutama melalui pelaksanaan amalan alam sekitar, sosial dan tadbir urus ESG. Menteri Kewangan Tengku Datuk Seri Zafrul Tengku Abdul Aziz berkata, fokus kepada ESG dan juga kemampanan adalah tepat ketika negara sedang menavigasi lanskap belum pernah berlaku sebelum ini yang boleh membawa kepada ketidaksamaan sosial serta jurang kekayaan melebar.
On this score, among the key eco-friendly priorities laid out by the 12 Malaysia Plan include reducing greenhouse gas emissions to 45% of GDP by 2030, in line with the Paris Agreement, a comprehensive national energy policy to provide long-term direction on achieving Malaysia's carbon neutrality aspiration, and a target for renewable energy to account for 31% of Malaysia's total energy capacity by 2025.
Kita berhenti seketika, kembali selepas ini.
Ingin tahu bagaimana konsultan Unify Business boleh menghubungkan Siti dengan lebih ramai pelanggan?
Jom Unify Business!
Dengan penyelesaian yang sesuai, sekarang belia boleh berhubung dengan pelanggan pada bila-bila masa di mana jua menerusi panggilan video dan semua informasi ada di hujung jari. Transformasikan perniagaan dengan Unify Business, rakan digital pilihan anda. Hubungi kami sekarang dan jimat 50%. Tertakluk pada terma dan syarat. Anugerah Pixel On Demand.
준비되었는가?
Lelaki sejati kini.
어떻게 이기는지가 아니고 왜 이겨야 하는지가 중요한 법이요.
Wanita penggerak semua. Dan filem-filem yang menggegarkan dunia. Filem-filem hebat Anugerah Pixel On Demand. Stream di Ultrabox dan aplikasi Astro Go.
Bertemu kembali. Tiada cukai baharu termasuk pengenalan semula cukai barangan dan perkhidmatan GST di Malaysia sehingga pemulihan ekonomi negara berada di landasan kukuh. Perkara itu dimaklumkan Timbalan Ketua Setiausaha Pembendaraan Polisi Kementerian Kewangan Datuk Johan Mahmud American dalam salah satu sesi persidangan Invest ASEAN pada Rabu.
for clarity, I better make sure that I start off by saying that, no decision has been made on the reintroduction of GST, and as my minister has clearly said, no new taxes, is being envisioned until our recovery is really firmly on track. But having said that, as you know, we are obviously looking to consolidate our fiscal position, and certainly GST is something that we would be looking at.
Dasar moneteri Malaysia kekal akomodatif bagi ekonomi negara cuma tidak pada tahap yang diperlukan seperti semasa kemuncak pandemik. Ini kerana kenaikan perlahan-lahan kadar dasar semalaman OPR daripada paras terendahnya pada 1.75% kepada 2% akan membolehkan pasaran menyelaras dengan sewajarnya. Timbalan Gabenor Bank Negara Malaysia BNM Dato' Abdul Rashid Ghafur berkata, keadaan Malaysia berbeza dari negara lain dan penting untuk menormalkan kadar faedah bagi merangsang ekonomi.
What do we mean by measured and gradual? So basically, it's really in terms of the timeline, in terms of timing, and so in terms of the level, the extent of the adjustment itself. I think what's important is that we will not need to be aggressive in this manner. So that's why we say it's gradual and also measured. We're not in the same situation as what we are seeing in the advanced economy in terms of the inflation and in terms of the strength of demand that we are experiencing over there. So we're not in that position. And as I mentioned just now, monetary policy would remain accommodative. So that's something that we have mentioned. And even adjusting by 25 basis point earlier, it still remain accommodative given that we are starting from a very low base. And the extent and pace of the adjustment will definitely depend in terms of how strong the economy would grow, and also in terms of the impact on the inflation itself. And what we are doing is really to appropriately calibrate our monetary policy accommodation based on realities on the ground itself, on the outlook for both growth and also inflation.
Baik, produk sedia dihidangkan atau ready to eat mungkin baru di kalangan usahawan dan juga masyarakat. Namun, dengan penggunaan teknologi dan juga media digital, produk keluaran Eja Food kini semakin dapat tempat di pasaran.
Pemiliknya Siti Hajar Husnan berkata, setelah 10 tahun bertapak dalam perusahaan kecil dan sederhana, Perintah Kawalan Pergerakan PKP semasa pandemik COVID-19 pada 2022 menjadi kemuncak produk keluarannya menembusi pasaran seluruh negara dan Singapura. Menggunakan platform jualan atas talian seperti Shopee dan Lazada, malaikan tidak, dalam sebulan, 1,000 item produknya terjual, menerusi Shopee termasuk mendapat tempahan Shopee Singapura. Malah momentum itu berterusan sehingga kini. Menyedari hakikat kepentingan media digital terhadap perusahaan SME sepertinya, Siti Hajar membangunkan pasukan media digital bagi memperhebatkan pemasaran secara dalam talian termasuk di media sosial Facebook dan Instagram menerusi jenama Eja Food.
Alhamdulillah, memang sangat-sangat membantu dan pada awalnya beberapa tahun yang dalam masa 5 tahun yang lepas tu saya buat berdua saja dengan husband saya, dan selepas online ni ada, alhamdulillah saya dah ada 5 orang bekerja lah. Memang syukur sangat-sangat. Alhamdulillah, pelanggan akak sekarang ni yang paling jauh dekat Singapura pun ada, sebab di Shopee ada Shopee Singapura. So diorang boleh beli through daripada Shopee. Dekat dalam Malaysia, Sabah Sarawak pun dah boleh beli kan. So jadi boleh ni. Kalau dekat Kuala Lumpur tu ada juga dekat hypermarket, Lulu Hypermarket lah. Boleh cari dekat Lulu Hypermarket. Sekarang daripada online tu memang rata-rata lah so far. Semua orang boleh rasa lah masakan daripada Johor ni keluar. Tahun lepas akak dah hire seorang untuk memang betul-betul jaga bahagian Shopee ni lah, bahagian Lazada, bahagian media digital ni, untuk lebih lagi berkembang lah, sebab nak suruh dia manage betul-betul lah benda ni. Sebab benda ni memang media sosial ni memang boleh membantu kita, sebab sekarang ni orang celik matanya memang buka media sosial.
Pemegang Diploma Elektronik Politeknik Kota Baru Kelantan ini menggunakan teknik retort dalam penyediaan makanan ready to eat tanpa bahan pengawet. Bahan yang dihasilkan boleh tahan sehingga 2 tahun tanpa penyimpanan di peti sejuk. Terdapat 14 jenis produk ready to eat, antaranya sambal ikan bakar, kerang sambal, ayam pat pet, kari ayam dan kari kambing. Selain itu, Ija Food turut menghasilkan 10 jenis paste makanan, air kordial dan minuman berperisa. Dia turut akui agensi kerajaan banyak menghulurkan bantuan, antaranya Kemajuan Johor Tenggara Kejora yang menyediakan mesin retort serta kilang dan pembungkusan. Manakala Institut Penyelidikan dan Kemajuan Pertanian Malaysia MARDI membantu dari segi penyelidikan produk, selain Lembaga Pemasaran Pertanian Persekutuan Farma dari segi pemasaran menerusi Agrobazar.
Sekarang, mesti anda dah tahu yang Disney Plus Hotstar boleh di-stream terus ke TV melalui Astro Ultra Box. Jika anda sudah melanggan Pack Movies dan dah ada Ultra Box di rumah, mari saya tunjukkan cara untuk aktifkan agar anda boleh mula stream. Pergi ke astro.com.my/Disney, log masuk Astro ID anda dan aktifkan Disney Plus Hotstar. Anda hanya perlu masukkan nombor telefon bimbit sahaja dan tunggu untuk OTP diaktifkan. Tekan butang Home pada alat kawalan jauh, klik pada ikon aplikasi Disney Plus Hotstar dan pasangkan mana-mana program daripada aplikasi Disney Plus Hotstar. Anda akan dapat melihat kod 4 angka pada skrin TV. Pergi ke tv.hotstar.com menerusi telefon bimbit, log masuk dengan nombor telefon bimbit yang digunakan untuk pengaktifan dan masukkan kod 4 angka pada aplikasi Disney Plus Hotstar. Notifikasi akan muncul menunjukkan anda telah log masuk menerusi TV. Klik Start Watching dan stream rancangan terbaru dan terhebat. Jika anda memerlukan bantuan, sila hubungi kami untuk membantu anda.
What's the worst thing you've ever done?
Setiap tindakan ada akibatnya.
I've come up with a plan on how to kill her husband.
Do you think we're making a mistake?
Do one wrong thing leads to another wrong thing. Ada sebabnya kita harus bijak membuat keputusan.
Takes a lot of guts to stand up for what you believe.
Atau kita harus membayarnya.
It's your story. You're in control.
It's always prime time di saluran 704 dan Astro Go.
Sektor yang mempamerkan pemulihan pantas selepas lebih 2 tahun terjejas akibat pandemik.
All right, as we know, the pandemic has definitely taught us the importance of, to get more people or educate them to care about their general health and also well-being, and also understanding their challenges and challenges of primary care during a pandemic. A company called Fever has been working towards injecting change into the traditional primary care doctor-patient relationship to facilitate a higher degree of health innovation. And also Fever is a healthcare company, a health tech company that provides affordable e-patient services through a healthcare as a service platform. It is an integrated healthcare service utilizing a mobile application to provide access to doctors anytime, anywhere, and Fever is set to significantly reduce the cost of primary care and also for corporates and consumers based on an affordable subscription model with easy access to patient health data. The spokesperson is Adlan Harkes, CEO of Fever, to introduce further about Fever in the industry. Joining us at this time, Adlan, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Good morning.
All right, Adlan, tell us more about Fever and how did Fever started to be healthcare as a service platform?
Well, yeah, so this is a new model for healthcare in Malaysia. And when you typically say something is as a service, it means that you're really leveraging technology to achieve economies of scale to deliver something at affordable prices. So within a healthcare context, what we actually did was we used technology to enhance and improve the patient experience, the outpatient patient experience. We also went and negotiated preferred pricing with our lab providers, and we cut out the middlemen from the supply chain for our drugs. And when you bundle all of that together and actually offer those cost savings to corporates, we're able to basically give them a subscription model that includes all consultations, all prescriptions, all lab investigations for a single price of 288 ringgit per employee per year.
So Adlan, what are the key features and services offered by Fever?
Well, so when you wanted to take that whole context of improving that whole patient experience, the outpatient experience, right, you can't exclude the physical context, but you also have to look at how you can improve that. So we do have a mobile and digital first experience, which includes the teleconsultation aspect, but you can't have that alone either. So Fever really needs to combine how you can go from the virtual experience into a physical experience, as well as get your medication at the end of it, all on the platform. And so when going back to that whole healthcare as a service, when you bundle it onto a platform and design every aspect around that from a technology perspective.
Adlan, how does Fever maybe set itself apart from other health tech industry players? Others players.
Okay, sure. There are a lot of other players in the industry, and at the start of COVID, there were only a handful of teleconsultation companies, and certainly they proliferated during COVID. But the difference between us and a lot of the other players is our business model. So really, when you take a look at teleconsultation, it's just a tool. When you want to design a business model around it, everything is affected by the business model. So the tools need to be designed that allow for both the physical and the virtual, and for that continuity of care for users to channel through the virtual into the physical when they require it, and off the back of that.
And also, Adlan, help us to understand and to comprehend further, because for the past 2 years, there's a lot of things we've learned from COVID-19, and COVID-19 certainly has brought upon, a reality check, especially for healthcare in Malaysia. What does Fever hope, to change in the Malaysian healthcare industry?
Well, I mean, one thing that COVID did bring about was it made people more comfortable with digital platforms. So certainly it reduced that need for us to convince people to get onto a digital platform, right? And moving forward, I think what we're going to find is a lot of people are going to see the importance in having access to their data. I think most of us will be familiar with actually going to a physical GP and getting medication off the back of that, but no one actually gets any consultation reports. No one actually understands their medical history. If you want to go back and look at medical history, you don't have access to that data. So this is what we're looking to impact moving forward.
Adlan, one of the issues is about the data privacy, security. Maybe you can share what technology features have you deployed to ensure health data are kept private and secure?
Well, health data, I mean, that's one of the most important aspects of this whole platform for us. Other than healthcare data, the other most important data would be financial data. So my partner in this Fever project is an ex-banker, and he also designed systems for international banking institutions. And we've brought that approach and that care and that diligence to security of data into our platform, which means from that perspective, even I can't access anyone's data. So the only people that have access are the doctors and the patients. And it's quite important in this respect that the patients are in control of their data. They're the ones that decide who can access it, who they share it with, and they're in control of the data at all times. No one else accesses it.
Even though Fever just has launched recently, can you tell us about what are your plans for Fever for this year?
Well, plans for this year, of course, I mean, we're going to try and target and hit our, clinic rollout. So an important aspect of having a digital platform, like I said, you can't differentiate between the virtual and the physical. So we're going to focus on expanding that physical clinic network as well. We're going to focus on our technology, and we're also going to try and hit our, of course, we're targeting to hit certain milestones with number of users, of course, but yeah.
Adlan, we can see that Fever Digital Healthcare is, here to improve the approach of delivering primary healthcare, addressing the concerns of patients about, of getting more accessible and affordable healthcare. But how can this digital healthcare, also ensure higher efficiency level, to not only in the urban area, but also in the suburban and also rural area?
So initially when we launched, I mean, there's a reason why we're targeting corporates, right? I mean, corporate employees, there are as many as I think in SMEs that you're looking upwards of 6 million users. Now, when you actually have that embedded within the corporate companies and you actually expand that to the dependents, you're actually looking at, close to 15 million Malaysians. Now, that's going to be spread throughout the country. So we can't basically just focus on the urban. You have to basically take care of people's parents, which requires us to have partners in the rural areas as well. And of course, I mean, being a digital platform, it is universal in terms of accessibility.
We can see that Fever is based on a subscription model with easy access to patient health data, how can it provide a potential business framework for the future with Fever?
Well, again, so the whole concept of the technology and as a service approach means that, we can take a look at and design pricing around that, right? So from an efficiency standpoint, you look at basically needing to avoid queue times in clinics. We may even be able to avoid sending you down to a physical clinic completely, but it doesn't mean that it's not included in the package. So that's our approach to basically, yeah. Sorry, I missed the last part of that question.
No worries. Take your time. This is the morning. All right, thank you so much, Adlan Herkes, the Chief Executive Officer, Fever, for sharing insight. Now I'm going to move on to my colleague here, Harits. He will explain a bit about the healthcare industry.
Yes. Okay. When we said about the healthcare technology and also how it helps to develop in terms of the digital health interventions and also to prevent diseases. Of course, we want to look at how technology impacts and helps to develop in terms of the, for example, electronic health records, telehealth, wearable devices. Of course, when we referring back or we recap back during the COVID-19 pandemic, we see a lot of, for example, telehealth has been conducted by the Ministry of Health. For example, when there's a
sektor yang mempamerkan pemulihan pantas lepas lebih 2 tahun terjejas akibat pandemik COVID-19.
Pulihkan ekonomi negara. Jadi kenapa kau nak zigzag?
And they can consult with the medical experts and they can update their current situation and also regarding their health condition. But in healthcare, actually, big data can provide a few following benefits. For example, reducing medication errors, aiding in preventive care, and also staffing more accurately. But there are some challenges. Okay, for example, if you can see that due to massive amounts of data collected, as my questions just now to Adlan, data collected from a variety system and also store and code data differently. Data interoperability is an ongoing challenge. So meaning that if we are currently facing lots of data, but how to make sure it's safe, kept and secure. And then additional challenges related to concern ranging from digital literacy among patients and also resulting unequal access to healthcare, issue related to like data storage, access sharing, and also ownership. As Najib questions to Adlan just now mentioned about how about issue of inequality, suburban, maybe those people who don't have their digital literacy is not as high as the current or people who stay in urban area, for example. This kind of issue of inequality are part of the challenge of digital technology. Najib and also
All right, that's the one of the biggest challenges that I think we should focus on, and Astro AWANI will keep focusing on this healthcare, digitalization in Malaysia especially. All right, moving on. Japan's economy shrank by an annualized 0.5% in the first quarter. Revised government data showed on Wednesday an improvement over the initial estimate of 1% contraction. Let's view a clip of discussion between host Brian Fernandez with guest Calvin Wong, market strategist from CMC Markets, on BizTech Asian Midday Market Watch, where he will share insights on regional markets performance as well as to discuss key issues and their impacts on markets. Take a look.
Japan's economy shrank by an annualized 0.5% in the first quarter. So that data is a significant improvement on the initial estimate of a 1% contraction. Now, that obviously has improved sentiment in that market, but we've also got a couple of decisions out later this week. We've got the Reserve Bank of India's latest interest rate decision later today. We also have the ECB interest rate decision out tomorrow. Give us a sense of what you're looking out for with all of this.
Sure. So maybe let's talk about the current expectation first, or that what's being possibly priced into the market on ECB interest rate decision, which is out on Thursday. So what we could see over here is that over the last couple of weeks, guidance from the ECB President Lagarde has really started to hint to the market that, hey, this year, we're now starting to actually move towards normalization rather than 2023. So what she actually kind of guided the market that we was actually stop a QE program next month, and also start to actually hike the first interest rate, which is on the deposit rate. So the deposit rate right now, which is the main policy rate, is at negative 0.5%. So what she guided the market is that there will be a first hike of 25 basis points in July, then followed by another potential 25 basis points somewhere around in September. In September. So that could actually bring the policy rate or the deposit rate, I would say, back to 0% from a negative, we call it a threshold. So what we could see over here, very interestingly, that has already been priced into the market. So I'd like to share a chart about this, the euro dollar, which is the technical, the chart of the euro dollar. So you can see this euro dollar, it has been in a broad, major multi-month downtrend, or a major downtrend since the start of this year. Okay, there at the bottom of the chart is another factor that actually could potentially drive the movement of euro dollar, is the yield spread differential between the US Treasury yield, the 2-year, minus the 2-year German bond. So we could see over here is that upward sloping orange line, which is the yield spread. It means that the US Treasury yield, the 2-year, is increasing at a much faster rate compared to the German bond. So that definitely put pressure on the euro dollar. So I could see, that's why we see the start of this year, we see a very significant downtrend movement on the euro versus the USD. That means we're talking about euro dollar weakening against the USD. And what's interesting over here, right, since the low of 12th of May, you start to see some signs of this kind of broad-based euro dollar weakness starts to be losing steam. That means a bit of euro dollar rebound against the USD. So that is being supported by the yield spread that is being declining as well between the US Treasury yield, the 2-year, versus the German bond 2-year. But what's interesting over here is that the price movement, right, of this euro dollar strength seems to be stalling at this resistance at 1.076. Then we have 1.085. Interestingly, and what's this stalling of what we could see over here is that we start to see a pickup in the US Treasury yield as well, the yield spread. So what's being said over here is that the market seems to have been priced what ECB President Lagarde has really guided the market. Yeah, so this is what the market really has been expecting. So unless ECB start to do a surprise move on Thursday, saying that, hey, instead of a 25 basis point hike, we will actually go for a much more aggressive hike, a guidance of 50 basis points. So that could actually renew this euro-dollar strength back into the market. But for now, it seems to be that the boost of the euro-dollar is being kept by this resistance at 1.076. And before we go, okay, let me share with you all the shorter-term chart. What is the daily chart from here? The shorter-term chart with the hourly chart. So if you look at the hourly chart, what we could see over here, technically speaking, it's been tracing this bearish double topish formation with the neckline support. Very quickly, let me... Okay, at 1.064. Okay, so what we start to see a series of lower highs, which indicate to us that the bulls are very hesitant to push above much higher, above 1.076, 1.079. Okay, so if we start to see a break below 1.064 after, because this is the risk event, which is the ECB risk event, post the ECB press conference thereafter, we could see the euro dollar to actually potentially see further potential downside towards the next near-term support at this 1.055 level, at least in the short term.
Okey, kita berhenti sekali lagi kembali selepas ini.
Yang telus dan tulus bersama yang paling dipercayai.
Suara Malaysia, segenap dimensi, bergema merentas platform.
Seimbang, terkini, laporan khas dan eksklusif.
Saksikan segmen Sinar Awani
setiap hari 8 malam
di saluran 501 Astro Awani.
Kes HFMD ini menyaksikan peningkatan lebih 15 kali ganda.
Untuk Malaysia kurangkan kadar kemalangan, negara kita perlu lakukan pelaburan besar dalam pengangkutan awam rel.
Cubaan untuk membunuh diri di Selangor saja dah terima 38 panggilan.
Terbaik melengkapi cita rasa anda.
Dia jadi anak Nawa tau.
Biarlah Ida yang jaga.
Nawa berjaga dia kan?
Antara bahagia dan sengsara.
Yang kita buat ni high. Tak, kita dah cuba dah. Tak ada apa pun.
Ikawan menjadi reality.
ผมอยากให้มีคลาสกิฟเพราะคนที่เจ๋งที่สุดในรุ่นนะเพราะฉะนั้นนะต่อจากนี้ไป
Belajar melalui kelebihan. Dan berhibur dengan artis kesayangan ramai. Memenuhi cita rasa semua.
Untuk memastikan Malaysia ada ke depan.
Kita boleh hentikan spekulasi adalah Melayu
balik kepada support system. Bukan orang yang membuat polisi.
Kalau itu yang dikehendaki, fine. Mungkin kita berbeza pandangan.
Tapi kita mempunyai kuasa yang boleh menentukan budaya di masa hadapan.
Polisi yang mesra wanita sudah tentu dia akan datang daripada pemimpin wanita.
Welcome back to Niaga AWANI. I'm going to move to the news oil prices where it jumped over 2% to a 13-week high on Wednesday as US demand for gasoline keeps rising despite record pump prices, while expectation that China's oil oil demand will face growing supply concerns in several countries, including Iran. Iran said it was removing 2 International Atomic Energy Agency surveillance cameras at a uranium enrichment facility as the board of the United Nations nuclear watchdog passed a resolution criticizing Iran for failing to fully explain uranium traces at undeclared sites. The move has raised tensions with the United States and other countries negotiating with Iran over its nuclear program and will likely keep sanctions in place and Iranian oil out of the global market for longer. Analysts have said a nuclear deal with Iran could add about 1 million barrels per day BPD of crude to world supply. Brent future rose 2.5% to settle at $123.58 a barrel, while US West Texas Intermediate WTI crude rose 2.3% to end at $122.11. Those were the highest closes for both Brent and WTI since March 8, which were their highest settlements since 2008. The Energy Information Administration said US commercial crude oil inventories rose unexpectedly last week, while crude in the strategy Petroleum Reserve SPR fell by a record amount as refiners' inputs rose to their highest since January 2020.
Meanwhile, US and European stocks slid on Wednesday as the outlook for rate hikes sullied sentiment, while bond yields rose after Eurozone gross domestic product beat expectations, adding to bets of a more hawkish European Central Bank. Trading was choppy as investors awaited an ECB meeting on Thursday and also US consumer price data on Friday that will highlight the dilemma they face. As central banks tighten policy to tame inflation, it could spark an economic slowdown. And also, the White House said it expected the headline inflation number on Friday to be elevated, while economists expect annual inflation to be 8.3%, according to a Reuters poll. Adding to the inflation concerns was a surge in crude oil to a 13-week highs, and also the S&P 500 almost confirmed a bear market when it slid more than 20% from its record closing peak on January 3rd to an intraday low of 3,810.32 on May 20th, but the benchmark closed higher. The Pan-European Stock 600 index fell 0.57% as concerns about growth weighed on banking shares, while MSCI's gauge of stocks across the global fell 0.56%. On Wall Street, the Dow Jones fell 0.81%, the S&P 500 lost 1.08%, and the Nasdaq Composite dropped 0.73%. Data showed the Eurozone economy grew much faster in this year's first quarter than the previous 3 months, despite the war in Ukraine, the European Union Statistics Office said, as it revised early estimates sharply higher. Investors raised their bets on ECB rate hikes, and money markets priced in 75 basis points of rate hikes by September. Harith has all the figures on oil prices and also on the US market and also Asia market, Harith.
Yes, Najib and Nina. Currently, FBM KLCI dropped 0.60 to 1,523.26. And let's take a look at the market view. Currently, Danasia currently the most active counter with 1.129 million counters. Shares have been traded this morning. And then there's a few counters that top gainer for today, PATDAC. PATDAC at the last done at 21.960, change of a positive 0.860 with the volume of 1,459 shares. And currently, besides that, Petronas, HLB, Hong Leong Bank, and also a few counters are top gainers this morning. Top losers are part of it, MPI currently dropped 0.580 with the volume of 55 at last done at 32.620. Okay, let's move on to the oil prices. Okay, let's take a look at the currently crude oil WTI. latest changes 0.07 with the highest at the $122.48 per barrel. And then crude for Brent, currently Brent at the high level at $111.34 per barrel. And this is the current update that showing that currently crude Brent currently positive at the 2.26. This is the latest changes on both Brent and also WTI. Then we move on to the US market, S&P 500. Currently, their performance on the daily basis is negative 1.08. But it's look at the for throughout a month, the positive of S&P 500 at 2.87, and Nasdaq 2.97, and also Dow Jones 2.33, all in a negative way. Look at the currently at the all US markets, Najib and also Nina.
All right, that's the numbers that we have for now. The real-time numbers for US market. FBMK LCI as well, and also in negative territory this morning. That's what we're going to see throughout this day, especially the intraday later this afternoon. The next news is from US. Of course, the US Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen tells lawmakers that the Organization for Cooperation and Economic Development, OECD, will create a system where corporations will provide the revenue that will benefit American workers. Yellen testified before the House Ways and Means Committee Wednesday on the Biden administration's fiscal 2023 budget and said the OECD agreement is very important. The committee's ranking Republican Representative Kevin Brady grilled the secretary on rising inflation and the impact of the OECD agreement, saying it was an economic surrender that Congress would not ratify. Inflation has reached 40-year record highs and 8.3% leap in consumer prices over the past year. The rate has shown signs of moderating but is likely to remain far above the Fed's 2% inflationary target through the end of this year. And also Brady said Congress will not ratify an agreement that makes America less competitive, surrenders precious US tax revenues to foreign governments by allowing them to target American businesses. Yellen said the agreement will level the playing field and benefit American companies.
And extending it would mean building a fair and stable tax system that promotes broadly shared growth is important to both adequately funding investments and to reducing deficits and debt.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said that his country is working with the UN to ensure grain could be exported from the country's ports through a safe passage. Speaking during a conference with managers of global companies, Zelensky said corridors for Ukraine's grain export must be created with the help of Western countries that Ukraine can trust. Meanwhile, Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba said his country needs security in Odessa to be ensured by trusted partners such as Turkey in order to restart shipping out grain exports. Kuleba said the country needs a complete or rather sufficient number of weapons capable of defending Odessa and this part of the Black Sea coast from the land against Russia's naval targets. He said that a mission to patrol the channel through which grain will be delivered should be ensured by countries Ukraine trusts. He added Turkey is one of them. Ukraine is one of the world's largest exporters of wheat, corn and sunflower oil, but the war and a Russian blockade of its ports have halted much of that flow, which is endangering food supplies to many developing countries. Kuleba said Ukraine is holding talks about resolving the food crisis and unblocking Ukrainian ports, primarily through the United Nations. Russia and Turkey voiced support for the creation of a safe maritime corridor in the Black Sea so Ukraine can export grain to global markets amid an escalating world food crisis. But Russia demanded that the Black Sea be demined, and Turkey said allowing the Ukraine export should be accompanied by easing Western sanctions against Russia.
Так, Організація Об'єднаних Націй і генеральний секретар пан Гутерреш, ми з ним працюємо над цим. Ми сказали, що ми вважаємо, що повинні бути безпечні морські коридори, зроблені завдяки флоту тієї чи іншої держави, західного світу тим, кому Україна може довіряти. Саме над цим сьогодні ми і працюємо.
All right, moving on, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, or OECD, says if Russia's war in Ukraine and the energy, also food crisis worsened, it will severely drag down global economic growth and also push up inflation this year. The Paris-based group on Wednesday said China's zero-COVID policy that has scrambled manufacturing supply chains also is weighing on a world economy that was starting to rebound from the COVID-19 pandemic. It's the latest institution to slash its growth forecast, underscoring the dimming economic outlook. The OECD expects the global economy to expand 3% in 2022, down from the 4.5% it predicted in December. Inflation is forecast at nearly 9% for the OECD's 38 member countries, nearly double the previous estimate.
The war is really sending shockwaves all the way to Africa and the Middle East.
Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro plans to cut fuel tax to help ease the burden on the cost of living. Speaking in Brasilia, he said that the proposal would slash federal duty for gasoline and ethanol to zero. Bolsonaro also called on the country's state governors to eliminate tax on diesel and also cooking gas. He said that his government would offset states for losses on receipts they would have raised from the existing tax. And also he said the legislation is yet to be approved by Brazil's Senate. The measures announced by Bolsonaro came 4 months before he hit to the polls against predecessor Lula da Silva in the country's presidential election.
Conversando com as duas lideranças do Congresso, resolveu avançar nessa diminuição da carga tributária para os brasileiros. No tocante ao diesel, nós já zeramos o imposto federal do mesmo, que é o PIS/COFINS, e estamos propondo aos seus governadores o 17% que fica para eles, em uma vez aprovado o projeto de lei complementar, nós, o governo federal, zerarmos o ICMS do diesel e nós pagaríamos aos seus governadores isso que eles deixariam de arrecadar.
Alright, laporan itu tadi mengakhiri Niaga AWANI untuk jam ini. Pelbagai rangkuman kami akan muatkan di laman web kami astroawani.com. Sudah pasti setiap buletin AWANI yang akan datang juga. Saya Najib Aruf.
Saya Nina Rosman.
Dan saya Haris Ashraf Hasnan.
Assalamualaikum dan salam hormat.